Whenever I began my incarceration, I had a childhood friend who said he wished there was something that he could do to help my wife. I believe his exact words were, "I would if I could, but I can't, so I won't." And then he cut and ran. I never talked to him again. I didn't get a chance to respond, but if I had, I would have told him that's coward's logic. What he meant to say wasn't that there was nothing he could do. He meant to say that he was confronted with a difficult situation that was scary and he'd rather flee it than face it. And if you hear too much judgment from me, don't, because I've done it too. We all have. This is human nature. Especially whenever the problem, it's not your problem. He wasn't the guy locked in his cell. I was. But the core idea that there's nothing you can do for somebody who's locked up, well, that's just nonsense. There's 100 cheap and easy things that you can do for an inmate to make his life easier. And I did say cheap rather than free, and that's unfortunate, but there's essentially a paywall between you and the inmate. If you want to write him a letter, it's going to cost a stamp. If you want to talk to him on the phone, you have to set up an account. And if you want to visit him, the prison doesn't actually charge, but getting there may be very expensive. Moreover, if you really want to improve the quality of life of an inmate, generally the easiest way to do it is just send them money. But if you're looking to not spend money, if you want to do something free, there is a real easy thing that anybody can do for an inmate, and that's just take the time to think about them. Better yet, talk to somebody about them, because that's how you keep somebody alive outside of prison, is remembering them and talking about them. People worry about having a place to parole, meaning a bed or a roof to live under whenever they come home, but it's just as important to still have an emotional sense of place, that your people have held a spot in their hearts for you. That's really all you can do that's free. But if you're willing to invest in a stamp, you can do an incredible amount of good for somebody just by writing a letter. Prison is a harsh and lonely place. You're isolated. This means that you're always going to be quietly worried that you're forgotten about, whether it's your friend or your mother or your wife. There's a little voice gnawing at you that you really are alone. It takes very little to quiet that voice. I remember an occasion whenever I was having a bad day and I got a letter. And at first I was excited because it was from my mother, who's a very busy woman. She works hard. And then I saw that it was nothing. It was just a tiny little square of paper, and I was disappointed. I opened it, and it was a Post-it. She'd sent me a Post-it. It said, "I don't have the time to write you a letter, but I'm thinking of you." I can't tell you how much that sentence meant. That was everything. That was just as good as a 6-page letter telling me everything that had happened to her that year. I was very happy. If you want to put a little bit more time into it, there are other things that you can do that are more personal. You can ask your inmate, you can say, "Hey, look, I don't have a lot of money, at $5 or less. What can I do for you?" You'd be surprised what they want. They want you to go someplace and take a picture, maybe of someplace that they remember, or of their brother, they don't have a photo of him, and print it and send it to him. Or they have this one book they can't remember the name of, and they want you to get online and Google something for them. It's little things, but if you're willing to invest a little bit of time, it's not a little thing to the person you sent that picture to. He might look at it every week for the next decade. Because that's the thing, is that these are long stretches of time that people are stuck in a box. A day in a cell sounds like an incredibly long time to somebody who hasn't been in a cell, because it is a long time. And that means a week or a month or a year is longer still. A picture, a book, these are big deals. I remember my Aunt Valena, who was just a wonderful person. She served some time in prison, and her time coincided with mine, which meant that I was unable to write her while she was incarcerated. Thankfully, my wife wrote her regularly, and they established a close bond, so I was able to know how she was doing. After my aunt paroled, she did pretty well. She finished her parole, she finished a degree, and she was living a good life whenever I finally wrote her and said that I was wondering if she could recommend what books I should read. She wrote back that it was going to be hard to write me at all, that stamps, envelopes, paper, times were tough for her and she couldn't promise she was going to be able to stay in touch with me. She further noted that she loved me very much and hoped I was okay, but she just didn't have the time or the energy to write down a list of books that I should read. Times were tough for her. I missed an opportunity here. I should have went and gotten a trust account withdrawal, taken a check for $5 or something off my books and sent it to her. I should have gotten a book of stamps and some envelopes. I should have written her and told her that whatever hoops I had to jump through, if there was any way for her to write me, I wanted to hear from her. Instead, I figured that I'd connect with her whenever I got out, that there was no urgency, and I took for granted that any time that you communicate with somebody may be the last time. I lost my aunt while I was incarcerated, and it was a devastating blow. This was the last letter that I received from her, but it was not the last communication that I received from her. A couple of weeks later, I got a small package in the mail. My aunt had taken 4 books. They were weathered and pretty beaten, and she had given them to my mother-in-law and asked if there was any way for her to get them to me because she wanted me to read them. As it turned out, my mother-in-law was able to get them to me, and I kept those books with me for quite a while. I treasured them, not just as books, but as the last communication from my aunt, and what a beautiful thing for her to have sent. It wasn't about the money, the $2 or $3 it cost to get the books. It was just so lovely to have something from her. Of course, you don't need to be entirely altruistic in your decision to help an inmate. I recall an occasion whenever my father's truck was stolen, whenever I was about 14 years old. And I asked him, I said, hey, Pa, have you thought about, maybe it's my uncle, Jay? Did he steal your truck? And my dad looked down and he went, no, absolutely not. Jay didn't do it. I went, Jay? The drug addict? The guy that stole it from everybody in the family? You're sure he didn't steal your truck? You're really sure? And my dad kind of laughed. Went, no, you don't understand. See, he and I have a deal. When he's in prison, I send him a package every quarter, 4 times a year, $50, maybe $75. And when he's out of prison, he doesn't steal from me. We've had the deal for 15 years and he's kept it this long. I see no reason he'd stop abiding by it right now. All things considered, that may have been a good investment on my father's part. It's a stressful thing to have somebody in your life that you're worried is going to steal from you. But those books, they stick with me. I think about them sometimes. You never know whenever somebody says something to you or does something for you, gives something to you, whenever it's going to be the last time that you communicate with them. You don't know if whenever somebody says something to you, it's going to be the last time that you communicate entirely. Maybe you're the person that's not going to be around the next day. It's the terror and the beauty of our lives that they can change or be crushed out in an instant, in an eye blink. I say it a lot. Stop. Take a moment. Think. Don't take it for granted. It might be the last moment.